My name's Ethan Harper. I'm 29 years old, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had finally found the kind of love you only get once in a lifetime. But then, at our engagement dinner, in front of 20 people, my fiancée made a toast so cruel, so calculated, it didn't just humiliate me. It dismantled the version of my life I thought was real. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I took back the ring, and I took everything else with it. But if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you she was the one. Vivian Calloway, 27. Brilliant. Beautiful. Fierce. She walked like she owned the room, but laughed like she forgot. I met her at a finance conference in Dallas, one of those 3-day hotel hellscapes where everything smells like industrial coffee and desperation. While everyone else argued about quarterly earnings, she sat across from me, poking at a bagel and challenging my take on bond market yield curves. Her eyes didn't just meet mine, they read me. That night, we snuck out before the keynote speaker finished droning on about synergy and grabbed tacos from a food truck by the parking lot. She got sauce on her blazer and didn't care. I cracked a dumb joke about Excel macros, and she laughed like she meant it. That laugh got me fast. 3 months later, she was spending most nights at my place in downtown Chicago. A year after that, she moved in fully. And 6 months ago, I proposed, with my grandmother's ring. That part matters. It wasn't just a ring. It was legacy. Platinum, early 20th century. Passed from a woman who survived 2 world wars and a marriage that nearly broke her. She gave it to my mom, who kept it even after the divorce. And when she handed it to me, she said, "Only give this to someone who deserves to carry your name and your wounds." I thought that someone was Vivian when I got down on one knee. She didn't even look at the ring before saying yes. She tackled me to the floor of our living room, wine glass still in her hand, and kissed me like we were teenagers. I laughed so hard I nearly forgot to be scared, because I was scared. See, there was something I hadn't told anyone, not even my ex-wife. Something that shaped almost every relationship I've ever had. It happened when I was a teenager. A medical condition. A surgery that fixed the problem but left a reminder. Something I learned to live with, but never fully accepted. Insecure doesn't begin to cover it. I'd spent years in therapy trying to feel whole again. I still hesitated every time intimacy got serious, always waiting for the moment someone would flinch, pull away, or worse, laugh. I'd never told another soul. Until one night, about 18 months into our relationship. Vivian and I were lying in bed, one of those late-night, raw, no barrier kind of nights. She asked me what I was most afraid of, and I told her. I didn't plan to. The words just spilled out. My voice was shaking. I couldn't even look at her. But she didn't laugh. She didn't pull away. She held me tighter, whispered that it didn't matter. That vulnerability was what made love real. That this was why she loved me. That moment felt like a sacred contract. Something private, unbreakable. I let go of shame that night, gave her a part of me I thought no one could hold gently. And for a while life was good. Until I met her parents, Carmen and Theodore Calloway, straight out of a Southern Baptist handbook. They lived in Phoenix, but their influence stretched across state lines. Theodore was one of those old-school church deacons' Bible verses for every situation, always offering grace at meals, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Carmen, different breed. polished, poised, and dangerous. She was the type of woman who complimented you with a knife hidden in her grin, always helping Vivian, always giving me unsolicited advice about leadership, marriage, finance. At first, I thought Vivian wasn't like her. She rolled her eyes at her mom's "how to keep your man" nonsense. She made jokes behind her back. She said she didn't want to be that kind of woman. I believed her. Now I wonder if that was the biggest lie of all. You can learn a lot from watching how a couple behaves over dinner. Carmen dictated every detail what Theodore ordered, how he styled his hair, even which friends he was allowed to call. And he just nodded along like a well-trained assistant. One night, I asked Vivian, "Do you think your mom always ran the show?" She smirked. She is the show. I didn't know that smirk would come back to haunt me. Because here's where everything starts to twist. I decided to throw Vivian a proper engagement dinner, not a backyard BBQ, not a group chat potluck. I wanted something timeless. So I booked the private room at the Signature Room, 95 floors above the city, floor-to-ceiling windows, a custom menu with her favorite wine, 20 guests, family, and close friends. I even flew her parents in and coordinated everything down to the table settings. I spent over $8,000 on that night. Not because I wanted to impress, because I wanted to honor her. I wore a new Tom Ford suit. Marcus, my best friend since college, helped me practice my toast. My sister Riley arrived early to help set up. When Vivian walked in, she looked like royalty. Gold silk dress, hair in waves, that same laugh that used to calm me. She kissed my cheek and said, "You did all this." "Every detail," I replied. I didn't know then. She'd been planning her detail too. During dinner, Theodore stood up and said, "Grace talked about God's timing, about trust and covenant." I teared up. Riley gave her toast, too. Talked about how I'd changed since meeting Vivian, how she hadn't seen me this happy since before the divorce. Marcus kept it light. Said Vivian was the first woman who could out-debate me on mutual fund strategy. Then Vivian stood up. I leaned back, smiling, heart full. She started like I expected. Talked about that first conference, the bad Italian food, how I'd laughed when red sauce hit my white shirt. People chuckled. Then she raised her glass, looked straight at me, and said, "Here's to marrying a man who worships me. Proof that love conquers all, even when the equipment comes in travel size." It landed like a gunshot. 2 seconds of silence. Then Carmen burst out laughing loud, sharp, proud. Nathan, Vivian's brother, spit wine. Theodore chuckled nervously. And I froze. Blood drained from my face. My hands were ice. I looked at her. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't confused. She was smirking. Smirking like her mother. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a joke that went too far. This was a performance. And I was the punchline. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt frozen in my chair, like someone had poured concrete down my spine. Her voice still echoed in my head. Even when the equipment comes in travel size. The smirk on her face. God, that smirk, it wasn't nervous. It wasn't apologetic. It was proud. Deliberate. The way Carmen's laughter filled the room, like a glass of red wine spilling onto white carpet, confirmed what I already feared. This moment wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated. Vivian's eyes met mine as the laughter rolled. She tilted her head ever so slightly, like she was daring me to react, testing me. My sister Riley sat completely still, clutching her wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. Her jaw was locked, and her eyes were full of fury. Marcus looked at me and then at Vivian, and back again, like he couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. The rest of the room, a mix of confused stares and forced chuckles. That awkward tiptoe energy that fills a room when everyone senses something's gone terribly wrong, but no one knows who's allowed to say it first. I stood up slowly. Not a single word. No raised voice. No how dare you. Just stood, pushed my chair back, and started walking around the table. Toward her, Vivian's smirk began to falter, but just barely. She still thought this was salvageable, that I'd play along, smile through the pain. Let her explain later how it was just a joke. Just nerves. She didn't understand yet. This wasn't nerves. This was cruelty. Calculated, practiced, and worse shared. I reached her side and gently took her left hand, slid my grandmother's ring off her finger. The room went quiet. All laughter snuffed out like a candle in a storm. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, clearly enough for the entire room to hear, "You don't deserve this." Then I turned around and walked out. No second glance, no dramatic door slam, just the sound of my shoes on the marble floor, and behind me, the stunned silence of people realizing a celebration had just turned into something else entirely. When I hit the cold air outside, I finally let myself feel it. The shaking in my hands, the tightness in my chest, the bitter sting of betrayal rising in my throat. I wasn't just embarrassed. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was exposed. She'd taken the most vulnerable part of me, something I gave her in full trust, and turned it into a punchline. At our engagement dinner, in front of everyone, and the worst part, I knew it wasn't spur of the moment. That line, that delivery, the timing, it was all too perfect, too rehearsed. Which meant she'd planned this. I remember pulling into my building's parking garage, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The elevator ride up felt like a funeral procession. Everything about the apartment, the scent of her perfume still in the hallway. The photo of us smiling at the Bean in Chicago suddenly felt hollow, rotten. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I started packing. I went straight to the bedroom and began pulling her clothes off hangers, one by one. Folded some, balled up others. Didn't matter. Everything of hers went into black trash bags, 12 in total. Winter coats I'd bought her for Christmas. Skincare products she imported from Korea. Those expensive heels she only wore once, but insisted she had to have. All of it. Every drawer emptied, every cabinet cleared. The last thing I grabbed was the framed photo from our anniversary in New Orleans. I held it in my hands for a full minute. We were smiling. Beignets on our cheeks. Wind blowing her hair into my mouth. I remember thinking, this is what happy looks like. I took it to the kitchen, dropped it in the sink, poured half a bottle of lighter fluid over it, lit a match, and watched it burn. The fire didn't roar. It hissed, quiet, angry, just like me. By the time the apartment was stripped of her presence, it was past midnight. The doorbell rang at exactly 12:47 a.m. I didn't answer. She pounded harder. Ethan opened the door. "Please, we need to talk." I sat on the couch, watching the door like it was a crime scene. I'd already called the locksmith 2 hours ago, paid double for the emergency service, money well spent. After 5 minutes of banging and pleading, I opened the door just a crack. Her makeup was smeared, hair wild. That golden silk dress from dinner now wrinkled, stained with what looked like red wine and tears. "Please," she whispered, eyes glossy. "It was just a stupid joke. I didn't mean to hurt you." "You did hurt me," I said, voice flat, and it wasn't stupid. It was calculated. "No, Ethan, I swear. I was nervous. I just wanted to be funny. I didn't think it would come out that way. You rehearsed it, didn't you? She blinked. I could see it then, hesitation. A crack. Vivian, I said, leaning just slightly closer. How many people knew what you were going to say? Your mom, Nathan. Her lips trembled. Please don't do this over one mistake. I looked at her for a long moment, then said, Move your foot. No. Not until you let me explain. We can go to therapy. I'll call your sister, your friend. I'll apologize in front of everyone. I swear, Ethan, I'll fix this. Move your foot. She stared at me, and when she saw that I wasn't bluffing, that there wasn't a sliver of forgiveness in me, she pulled her foot back. I closed the door, turned the new deadbolt, and just stood there. She kept banging, kept pleading, then threatening. Fine, you want to play it like that? You think you're some big man now. I know things about you, Ethan. I can ruin you. I turned on the TV, volume low. Her voice eventually faded. I waited a full hour to be sure she was gone before I started hauling the bags down. One by one. Didn't use the service elevator. Didn't rush. I wanted to take my time. 12 trips in total. Each bag landing on the sidewalk like a sealed chapter. At 3:15 a.m., I heard a car door. Peeked out my bedroom window. There she was. Still in the engagement dress, barefoot, digging through trash bags in the dark. Looking up at my window every few seconds. Like I'd come down. Like I'd say, I forgive you. I stayed right where I was, watching. Because when someone shows you who they are, you believe them. I thought the worst was over after that night. Turns out, I was just getting started. The days that followed were numb. Like I was watching my own life from behind a glass wall. I still went to work. Still answered emails. Still hit the gym like clockwork. But everything felt muted. Artificial, like I was living underwater. 3 years of memories, jokes, shared routines all deleted in one night. And yet, the aftershocks kept coming. On the surface, I was composed, but inside I was spiraling. Not because I missed her, I didn't. I missed the illusion. The version of her I thought was real. The version that never existed. But at least, I figured, I'd cut the cord cleanly. She had her consequences. I had my closure. Except she didn't let go. The first red flag came at work. 40-year capital management isn't massive, but it's not small either. Open floor plan, glass offices, fake plants, espresso machine no one knows how to clean. Finance people don't need much. We just need numbers and not being bothered. But I noticed the shift immediately. People started going quiet when I walked by. Meetings that used to include me got rescheduled. I'd say something in the group Slack and get silence. Or worse, emoji reactions without replies. At first, I chalked it up to overthinking. Until Jake from IT cornered me in the break room. Hey man, can I ask you something off the record? Sure, I said, biting into an apple. Is it true? What they're saying about your situation? My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. What exactly are they saying? Jake glanced around, lowered his voice. That you've got some kind of, condition down there. That's why your engagement blew up. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He took my silence as confirmation and held up both hands. Look, man, I don't care. But Brett's been telling people all sorts of stuff. Said his new girlfriend told him everything. And based on the details, I think he's talking about Vivian. There it was. The bile climbed up my throat, bitter and thick. Brett Matthews. Mid-30s, loud, alpha bro energy, finance frat boy who never outgrew college, the kind of guy who high-fives after PowerPoints and thinks emotional intelligence is a dating app. He and Vivian must have started seeing each other almost immediately, and instead of just moving on, she'd turned my most private vulnerability into entertainment. Again, except this time, it wasn't just a joke at dinner. It was corporate gossip, office politics, reputation. I'd worked my ass off to build credibility at 40A. I wasn't flashy, but people respected me. I was reliable, focused, discreet. Now I was a meme in someone's group chat. I didn't rage. I didn't storm HR. I waited. That afternoon, I caught Brett by the coffee machine. He was holding court, as usual, cracking jokes with two junior analysts. I stepped beside him, calm and quiet. "We need to talk." He turned, smirked, didn't even pause. "Relax, man. If you're that sensitive, maybe don't give people stuff to talk about." My jaw locked. He leaned in closer, grinning. "Vivian tells me everything. Bro, maybe if you were more of a man, she wouldn't be looking elsewhere." The switch flipped in me, and for a brief moment, I wanted to smash his face into the espresso machine, wanted to hear it crack, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned in just as close and said, voice low, "Keep my name out of your mouth. If you don't, my lawyer's gonna shove a lawsuit so far down your throat, you'll need a colonoscopy to find it." His smirk cracked, just a hair, and I walked away. That night, I called Celia, my lawyer. She'd helped me through contract negotiations in the past, but I knew she had a background in employment and personal litigation. I laid it all out. The dinner, the betrayal, the public humiliation, the workplace defamation. She was quiet for a long beat, then said, "We can work with this. Harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, workplace interference. We'll start with restraining orders. You need to establish a legal paper trail." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Celia's voice softened. "I know this is personal, but we're going to handle this clinically, clean, strategic. You're not the villain here." "Ethan." I thanked her, hung up, then stared at the phone in my hand for a long time. The thing about betrayal is, you can't fight it with emotion. You fight it with structure. The next morning, I filed restraining orders against both Vivian and Brett. Had them served at their respective workplaces publicly. During peak hours, 40A's HR team didn't say a word, but their eyes said enough. Vivian called that evening. Blocked number. I picked up just once. Her voice was full of rage and panic. "You're ruining my life," she spat. "Brett dumped me. My firm's freaking out. I could lose my internship. All because you can't take a joke." I didn't say anything. "Are you even listening?" Still silent. "I swear to God. Ethan, if you don't drop this, I'll tell everyone everything. Your friends, your coworkers. I'll post it online. You want that?" 30 seconds. That's all I gave her. Then I said, "Stay away from me. If I hear my name in your mouth again, I will sue you into the ground. This is your only warning." Click. Blocked. Done. Or so I thought. Until exactly 1 week later, I was eating lunch at my desk, scrolling through my inbox, when a video message landed in my personal email. No subject. No sender name. Just a move file. I clicked, thinking it was from a client, and the screen filled with her face. Vivian, flushed, breathless, smirking at the camera in a dim, unfamiliar room. Then the camera pulled back. Brett was there, too. They were in the middle of it. No blurred edges, no discretion, just skin, motion, and her voice clear as day. And then, as if it were scripted, she looked straight into the lens, said my name, smiled. This is what it looks like to be with a real man. Too bad you'll never know what that feels like. The screen froze. My fork clattered onto the desk. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't the sex. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the intent. She wanted me to watch, to suffer, to feel small. She'd crafted the perfect weapon. And now, she'd just handed me the proof. I sat at my desk, still holding the phone, screen frozen on Vivian's smug face. My lunch sat untouched beside me, grilled chicken and brown rice, suddenly nauseating. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I felt hot all over, like my skin didn't quite fit anymore. The hum of the office outside my door became a dull, blurry roar. I clicked off the screen, sat in silence, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I did. This wasn't some ex lashing out emotionally. This was premeditated psychological warfare. A precision strike. Right to the heart of everything she knew would destroy me. And she recorded it, looked into the lens, said my name. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Okay, Vivian, you want to play games? Let's play. But I don't scream. I don't throw punches. I build systems. And this time, I was building one to dismantle her entire facade. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I drove back to a cafe near the river where Vivian and I used to spend Sunday mornings, where she'd hold my hand across the table while talking about wedding venues. Now I sat in that same booth alone, facing the empty seat, and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was copy the video multiple times, onto encrypted USB drives, onto cloud accounts with passwords I wouldn't forget. I trimmed down the footage, not the explicit parts. That wasn't the point. I kept only what mattered. Her face, her voice, that final line. This is what it looks like to be with a real man. Too bad you'll never know what that feels like. I isolated the clip, cleaned the audio, added timestamps and metadata to prove authenticity. Then I created 4 anonymous email accounts, each on a different public computer across the city. I wore gloves, wiped keyboards, left no trace. I knew exactly who needed to see this. Not the police, not social media, but the people who gave her power. That meant her father, Theodore, her mother, Carmen, her brother Nathan, and 2 of her closest grad school friends, people whose Instagram posts were still tagging her in wine nights and boss babe memes. I sent the clip to each of them, using a neutral subject line. You should know what she's capable of. Then I sat back and waited. It didn't take long. 6:03 a.m. The next morning, my phone rang. Blocked number. I picked up. The voice on the other end was barely above a whisper. Ethan, it's Theodore. He sounded like he'd aged a decade overnight. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm even looking at. But it's her. It's Vivian. I heard her voice. I heard what she said. He paused, and I could hear him swallow. My daughter. What has she become? I didn't gloat. I didn't offer comfort. I just let him speak. I was up all night, couldn't sleep. Carmen. She laughed at first, said it was fake. But then she saw her own reflection in it. She knew. He exhaled. Long, heavy. We raised her better than this. I thought we did. But maybe Carmen raised her alone while I stood by and nodded like a coward. His words hit me in a way I didn't expect. For a moment, I saw myself in him. The man who stayed silent too long, who thought love meant endurance, even when it twisted you into something hollow. I filed for divorce this morning, he said, voice steadier now. After 32 years, I can't stay married to someone who encourages this kind of cruelty. I've already frozen the joint accounts. I blinked. Wait, what? I cut Vivian's tuition support. He added, she's got 1 semester left. Let her figure it out. Maybe it's time she finally faced the consequences. I didn't say much, just thanked him, wished him strength. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The man who chuckled when his daughter mocked me at dinner. Now he was burning down his entire life to make it right. And Carmen. Well, by noon, I started getting text updates from old coworkers and mutual friends. Turns out, Carmen had built her entire identity on appearances. Women's Bible study groups, Sunday brunches, hosting fundraisers, maintaining status. And now, word was spreading through their church like wildfire. About the video, about the restraining orders, about the scandal she'd been so smugly proud of. I could almost hear her stilettos snapping under the pressure. Vivian, meanwhile, went silent. No calls, no messages. But I knew she was scrambling. I checked LinkedIn. Her internship had been terminated early. No reason listed. I knew what that meant. Finance firms don't do public drama. They don't tolerate legal baggage. A single restraining order in the system is enough to blacklist you from half the Fortune 500. No internship meant no full-time offer. No offer meant no fallback. And no tuition meant what? Student loans. Minimum wage. Reality. For someone like Vivian, that wasn't just a setback. That was death by obscurity. But just as I started to feel peace, the phone rang again. Blocked. I didn't answer. But this time, she left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, breathless. Ethan, please. I don't know what you sent them, but my dad won't speak to me. My mom is having panic attacks. My friends won't return my calls. Brett dumped me. He said I was radioactive. There was a pause. A sob. I didn't mean to ruin you. I was just angry. I was scared you were going to leave me. And I wanted to feel like I had control. Like I wasn't the weak one. Another pause. Then, I'm losing everything. Click. I deleted the message. Didn't save it. Didn't reply. Because I knew the truth. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she lost. 2 weeks after I sent the video, silence became a new kind of noise. No more calls from Vivian. No more blocked number voicemails. Just absence. Like she'd dropped off the planet. But I knew better. People like Vivian don't disappear. They linger. They wait. And sure enough, whispers started circulating again, this time from people who didn't even know I'd been engaged. One morning, Jake from IT found me in the elevator. She was outside the building yesterday, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Vivian. He nodded. Parked across the street in some old sedan. Just sat there. Never came in. Just watched. I didn't say anything. Just stared ahead, jaw tight. Then Riley called my sister. She showed up at Mom's house. Riley said, voice flat. What? Yeah. Said she wanted to talk to you. Mom told her to leave. She cried. Cried like a movie scene. Knees on the porch. Mascara running. My stomach turned. This wasn't remorse. It was control dressed as regret. Classic Carmen playbook. Make yourself the victim. Force guilt. Twist sympathy into access. But it wasn't going to work on me. Not this time. I stayed silent. Watched. Waited. And that's when Brett reappeared. I saw him at a gas station not far from the office. He looked like hell. Unshaven. Eyes sunken. Shirt wrinkled. Collar limp. The confident jerk who once laughed in my face now looked like a man running from himself. We locked eyes. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. I gave him one nod. A warning. He closed it and walked away. That should have been the end of it. But then came the news I didn't expect. Vivian was showing up at his apartment, sitting in her car for hours, calling him, texting, showing up at his job. I wasn't surprised Brett had dumped her. He only liked chaos when he wasn't the target. But now Vivian had nowhere else to go. And when she ran out of money, out of friends, out of pretexts, she started circling the drain. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Carmen had started working at a local retail chain, folding yoga pants and dealing with teenage managers who didn't care about her last name. Apparently, she'd never had a real job in her life. Her hands were blistered after 3 shifts. Someone even caught her crying in the break room when a supervisor told her to restock faster. The irony, she used to mock women who worked hourly, called them directionless. Now she was taking orders. Meanwhile, Theodore filed a motion to freeze all joint assets. The suburban house defaulted. Their cars repossessed. Carmen had spent 3 decades living off the illusion of control, and now that illusion had been ripped away like a silk tablecloth. Vivian, on the other hand, was couch hopping. Rumor had it she was working part-time at a coffee shop downtown, wearing thrifted clothes, borrowing money from old classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She posted once on Instagram one of those vague captions, "Sometimes God breaks you before he blesses you." But there were no comments. Just one like, people were finally seeing her. Not the curated version, the real one. And the longer the silence dragged on, the more I healed. Therapy helped. So did the gym. So did work. But more than anything, it was the small things that anchored me. A quiet evening without checking my phone in dread. A full night's sleep without nightmares. Drinking coffee in peace without the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. Then one night, I got a call. Not from Vivian, from Carmen. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. I picked up, said nothing. Her voice came through, brittle and fraying at the edges. I just wanted to say, "You destroyed us." I waited. She continued, "You think you're righteous, you're not. You're vindictive. You sent that video. You ruined her life. You ended my marriage." I still said nothing. Her voice dropped lower. "You should have just been a good man and looked the other way." That's when I finally spoke. "No, Carmen. A good man tells the truth. A good man doesn't let a snake coiled around his throat convince him it's a necklace." She snapped, "You'll regret this. No one will ever trust you again. You'll always be the man who couldn't take a joke." And just like that, I knew. She hadn't learned anything. She was still clinging to the belief that men should be silent, compliant, easy to manage. Just like Theodore had been. But I wasn't Theodore. I was done being silent. The next morning, I scheduled a legal meeting with Celia. We went through every step of escalation, civil lawsuits, protection orders, digital harassment clauses. Celia looked at me and said, "If you want to file civil defamation, now's the time. But just know, it'll be public." I thought about it. about the mental toll, about dragging all of this further into the open. And then I looked at my grandmother's ring still in my safe, still waiting for someone who earned it. I closed my eyes and said, let's do it. Because this wasn't just about closure, it was about consequences. It was about showing the next guy that silence isn't strength, that you don't have to shout to shatter someone's illusions. You just have to survive loudly. It's strange how pain can feel both crushing and oddly freeing. 3 months had passed since that night at the signature room, the night Vivian humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about. 3 months of quiet rebuilding, of reclaiming myself piece by piece. I wasn't the same man who had sat there, frozen, as her toast cut through my heart like a blade. And that change was visible to others. The office gossip died almost overnight after Brett's termination. People stopped whispering. The subtle side-eye vanished. I even caught Jake giving me a nod in the hallway one day, something like respect, or maybe apology. I was healing. More than that, I was growing. Theodore called me one morning. His voice was different this time, no longer weak or broken, but steadier, stronger. "Ethan," he said, "I wanted to thank you." I blinked. For what? For helping me see the truth about my family, about myself. He told me how, after the divorce, he'd started attending a different church, one where faith wasn't about control, but kindness and respect, where men and women shared power rather than handing it over to toxic traditions. "It's like waking up," he said softly, "like finding a new way to breathe." I smiled, genuinely happy for him, but I also felt something else, a lingering ache for the years lost to silence and fear. Meanwhile, Vivian was nowhere to be found. No calls, no messages, no new drama, just a void. I heard through the grapevine she was working part-time jobs, coffee shops, retail stores barely scraping by. Her social media accounts had gone dark, and the few people who still knew her seemed to avoid the topic altogether. Her mother, Carmen, had been spotted stocking shelves at a discount store, looking worn and defeated. The grand matriarch of their family, now subject to the very orders she used to bark. I thought about the ring, the one my grandmother entrusted me with. It had been my symbol of hope, of legacy. Now it represented resilience. I locked it back in my safe, waiting for someone worthy, someone who understood that love wasn't about power or games, someone who embraced vulnerability, not weaponized it. I was seeing someone new now. Alana. She was patient, kind. She knew about my past, my insecurities, but she didn't judge. She accepted. And for the first time in years, I felt safe, whole. One evening, as I closed my laptop after a long day, my phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. It was Theodore. His voice was trembling. I found something. My heart raced. What I asked? Emails, conversations, photos, things Carmen and Vivian never meant anyone to see. He hesitated. They're worse than we thought. I swallowed hard. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And suddenly, I realized, the last chapter wasn't written yet. It was a cool evening in Chicago, the kind where the river reflects every light like a shimmering promise. I sat by my window, the city sprawling beneath me alive, restless and unforgiving. In my hand, I held the ring, my grandmother's ring, still heavy with history, still waiting for someone who deserved it. I'd learned a lot in the past months, about betrayal, about power, about the cost of silence, and most of all about trust. Alana, the woman I was seeing now, knew my story. She didn't flinch when I told her about my condition. Didn't shrink away from the scars I carried not just on my body, but deep inside. Her kindness was a balm I didn't know I needed. Sometimes, at night, I'd catch her watching me with those eyes full of acceptance and quiet strength. It made me wonder how many times I'd let fear stop me from truly living. Then the phone rang. It was Theodore. His voice, steady but soft, carried a new weight. "Ethan," he said, "after everything, I want to thank you. You showed me what it means to stand up for yourself and for truth." He told me how his divorce had reopened wounds, but also opened doors to healing, to faith, to a new understanding of strength. "I'm remembering what a healthy relationship looks like," he said. "And I'm trying to be better for myself and for those I still care about." I smiled, hearing the sincerity in his words. But the story wasn't just about endings. It was about beginnings. I thought about Carmen, once the matriarch, now humbled by her own actions. About Vivian, struggling to rebuild a life she shattered with cruelty. And about me, I wasn't perfect. I'd carried my own doubts, my own scars, but I was free. Free to define my worth. Free to choose love that lifts rather than destroys. I looked at the ring again. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of legacy, of resilience, of hope. I closed the safe and turned away, because I knew, when the time was right, I'd find someone who saw me not just my past, but all I was becoming. And until then, I'd keep living, learning, growing, because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in tearing down others. It's in building yourself back up, in finding peace in the pieces, and in holding on to hope even when the world tells you not to. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been betrayed, disrespected, underestimated? How did you find your strength? Drop your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that we're never alone. And if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe, because this isn't just my story. It's ours. The story of standing up, of fighting back, and of finally being free. The ring stays safe for now, but the heart, it's ready.